And good morning. Aloha. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. This is the COVID-19 Care Conversation, a place where we talk about the Hawaii response to the pandemic here in the islands. And today, Ryan, we are going to be talking about the restaurant industry in particular. Of course, this conversation brought to you by Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health. So much of business has started to reopen, and one of the big things that is back in business are Hawaii's restaurants.
That's right. We're really excited to be speaking with Chef Lee Anne Wong, who has a number of restaurants, not only here on Oahu, but on Maui. And so she's going to be joining us in a little bit. I apologize if you can hear a little bit of static noise in the background. We are working from home, and I live in a condominium, and my neighbor upstairs decided to redo his flooring. So there's a little bit of noise. So I apologize in advance for any back noise that you have. But again, we want to hear where you're watching from. Let us know and give us a shout out to all those loyal viewers who tune in every single day. We enjoy reading your comments and hearing where you're watching from. But again, we will be talking to Chef Wong in just a few moments to talk about some of the adjustments she has had to make to her business and the way she operates these restaurants that she manages.
Yeah, and we also wanted to have this conversation as you start to dine out, as customers. I know there are a lot of people who have some questions about what it's really like to get out there, to sit down in a restaurant, what you can expect. So that's also why we wanted to bring her on to talk about the dining, the customer experience, what you can expect, and how different restaurants in Hawaii are making sure that customers are safe and also that their staff members are safe. So we look forward to that. Of course, we always like to start with the count. Yesterday, a bit of a sigh of relief, 4 new cases after days and days of double digits. It felt good, Ryan, to just see single digits yesterday.
That's right. And state officials, again, saying that they have a much better handle on some of these cases now that are coming through because they're able to do that contact tracing. The governor speaking on our show yesterday about the difference between where the state is now compared to where the state was, say, 2 months ago. And the ability for the state to now sort of track and make sure that they have a manage and handle on these. So he didn't seem too alarmed by those large numbers over the weekend. But again, 4 cases, I think a lot of people breathing a sigh of relief. We'll see where the count is later today when those numbers come out again.
That's right. And the big headline in the paper today, there are several. One of them is talking about the governor, what he talked about yesterday, hoping to restart trans-Pacific travel in some way, lifting somewhat of the quarantine. I shouldn't say lifting the quarantine, really keeping the quarantine in place, but creating a mechanism where people can bypass that, perhaps with some testing. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that in the next day or two. We are expecting that announcement from the governor. Also, lawmakers back in session, and they are poised to tackle COVID-19.
That's right.
But before that,
somebody who can help us talk a little bit about some of the efforts to reopen is Chef Lee Anne Wong, who is joining us now from the island of Maui. Chef, great to see you and great to be able to talk to you and have this conversation with you. First off, if you can sort of explain to us sort of how your businesses have been impacted by everything that's happened.
Well, on Koko Head on Oahu, we closed down in late March, and we remained closed until we received our PPE loan, and we reopened with a limited menu, limited staff for takeout in early May, and we've just recently reopened for dine-in services. And so it's been a little bit challenging. We are a very small restaurant, 1 room. So we had to lose a couple of seats and rearrange our table configuration, and also put some tables outside. So it's a little, it's a little bit different when you get a Koko Head, but the food's still delicious. And then I took over the Pioneer Inn here in Lahaina, Maui, back in December. And the intention was to change it over to a new concept, which we're doing. But, COVID came along, and really, I think I forget what, it was either like Newsweek or USA Today, but like Lahaina was supposed to be like the number 2 city in the country that was going to be affected by COVID. And it's absolutely true. Maui, especially Lahaina, is a town that it's, 90% visitor dependent, tourist dependent. And there are a lot of shops here. There are a couple of restaurants open, but everything's still boarded up. There's not a ton of traffic on, foot traffic on the streets. Lahaina's slowly coming back to life a little bit. There's a period when it was like an absolute ghost town, a little bit creepy. but yeah, I mean, we don't know when visitor traffic will come back here. I mean, thankfully, the governor opened up inter-island traffic, and so we're starting to see people come stay at the hotel from other islands. But it's really, really hard, and it's definitely affected a lot of businesses in Maui County.
We like to invite the audience to ask questions. So Diana has one this morning. She says she kindly asked, what are the guidelines requirements that restaurants need to meet to operate? Is the kitchen staff for a restaurant required to wear masks? So for people who haven't been dining out and are starting to re-engage, what can they expect?
Okay, so first of all, we are testing all of our employees before they come in the door. So everybody gets a temperature check. If anybody is feeling sick at all, we just encourage them to stay home just to begin with. All of our employees that are dealing with guests face-to-face always have the PPE. They have both masks and gloves on. Our kitchen staff, however, are not required to wear masks, only because it is, as most people know, it is very, very hard to breathe, and it's about 10, 20 degrees hotter in a kitchen. So, our kitchen staff is, everybody is mask ready. Everybody's wearing gloves. Everybody's consistently changing the gloves, washing their hands. So, we are taking all the precautions that we can to make sure that the food is delicious and safe as always. I think there are a lot of sort of fears about, food. Can COVID be transferred via food? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, but right now I haven't heard of any case of anybody getting sick or getting COVID from going out to eat at a restaurant directly through contact with food. So crowded spaces, that's a whole nother thing. So I really, it's hard to say, but my crew, I know everybody is mask ready and gloves ready. Occasionally my kitchen crew takes their mask down so they can breathe a little, but that's pretty much where we're at. That's pretty much where most restaurants should be at. And I think, it's very unappealing to go into a restaurant and you're used to being welcomed and seeing smiles and aloha, and it's hard, and it makes people scared when you see somebody in a mask and gloves, because it's a very sort of medical, scientific look. It just doesn't feel like a restaurant. And the one thing I would say to people who don't want to wear masks is that, please wear a mask. It's for everybody's safety. It's just a courtesy for everybody. And we're all in this together. And that's really, I think the most important thing is just, we're taking every precaution we can to keep our community safe. And I think, that's the overall message that we want to also give to visitors who are still coming to these islands.
One of the also things that, of course, this has impacted is just businesses overall being able to operate. And so if you can kind of take us back to when this all started, what was sort of the decisions that you had to make in terms of how do you support your employees? How do you keep things moving with essentially everything shut down? What were the first few months like for you as a restaurant owner? I
mean, it was really hard. It's very, everything with COVID happened very, very suddenly. And, I'll say, I've said this a million times in every interview. It's like, nobody asked for this. And restaurants especially, they didn't do anything wrong. Businesses, we talk about restaurants shutting down, or restaurants shutting down because they're not doing good business, or the food is bad, or they got a bad health inspection. This has nothing to do with any of that. And so, all of the businesses and the restaurants and the bars of Hawaii closed down to do their civic duty, to do their moral duty, and their, and do, help the community. And I think, it was very emotional for me, I know, to actually close the doors of my restaurant. We've been open since 2014, sorry. And, that was really hard, having to let go of all my employees, not knowing whether or not I'd be able to hire some of them back. Koko Head, we're very, very fortunate because we have a solid community of people who love to dine with us, and, our regulars in Oahu, and just actually even from all over the country. We've had such incredible support from them. And, unfortunately I had to put up a GoFund for my staff, which was great. And so thank you to everybody who donated to that. And then, we've been trying to figure out the intricacies of the PPE loan, in terms of matching, the difficulty of matching employees' unemployment, what they would get for sitting at home, versus coming into work. And we've had to kind of play around with that. And as the rules keep changing, and now the the deadline for using the money has been extended, and so we've had to sort of change our approach again. So we went from, having people working full time and then making, the maximum. We were actually paying them more, so it would equal what they would make if they were sitting home on unemployment. Now we have to, because we have to take our loan and extend it through the end of October and make it last, we are keeping all of our employees to 3 days a week and keeping them under 30 hours so they can still file for unemployment, partial low wages, and still get all that money from the government, but it's not coming out of our loan. So it's complicated. But we want our thoughts are with our employees, and we want them obviously to make the maximum amount of money that they can, which would be through staying on unemployment right now.
So many restaurants are like yours in Kaimuki, where they're intimate spaces. And with these new requirements, especially in Hawaii, the places that we eat, they tend to be small. And so with these requirements of social distancing, can restaurant owners actually, make their bills? Can they make rent and all of the cover their costs when you have these very reduced capacities? How is that going to work?
Hawaii, I'm from New York. I always say, I moved to the one place that's more expensive than New York City. And that's kind of, that's the sad truth, is that, we've been asked as restaurants now to reopen, and we've been told we can only have 50% seating capacity, but nobody's giving us a 50% rent break, and that's the reality. So the real restaurants really need a bailout, like a PPE, a loan. That's it. Is it a grant? Is it a loan? There are all these sort of like this minutia and these conditions that could essentially be putting any business who gets a loan and grant and doesn't use it properly, could be putting that business putting them out of business for good, excuse me. And it's, I feel like we as restaurants, we need a bailout at this point. We need the federal and state government to take a look and say, like, this is how much tax revenue that restaurants bring in for the country. Like, and what more can we do to keep restaurants afloat? And that's really it. We've given bailouts to airlines and hotels and all these other big companies that still charge the average customer nickel and dime them for every little thing. And it's like, well, if restaurants go away, if these places where we can be social, where we can relax, where, it's such a if you think about like how many times you go out to eat or how many times you get takeout, and you think about all the people that that work in the hospitality industry, whether it be at a hotel or a restaurant or a bar, and it's like, it really is such a huge part of the fabric of our community, especially the Hawaiian community, where our state is highly dependent on tourism and travel and hospitality. And it's, it's kind of, we're in this new bizarre, this new reality where it's like, we have to say aloha, but we have to say it with a mask on, So how can we convey that? How can we convey our aloha to guests who, are coming here and want to see, share in the beauty of our islands? But how can we say, please wear a mask, we're wearing a mask, please wear a mask. And also, I get that, people don't understand why we have a quarantine, and obviously that it's made national news that we have an inter-island quarantine, or we have a quarantine, and we've arrested people and we've sent people off island. And I think, there's been, I've heard a lot of things personally, like what's going on with the state of Hawaii, is there's no aloha. And I'm like, well, it's a very complicated issue. So I think part of it is just, as a community, we need to have a very open dialogue with the rest of the world about what it's like to live in one of the most isolated places in the world, and why we're taking all the extra steps necessary to make sure that we can keep our community safe. You saw the bump in cases in the past few weeks, and it was like RIMPAC came to Oahu and they weren't quarantined. So why was the military given an exception to run around the island without a 2-week quarantine? So there are little things like that. It's like, it has to be across the board good for everybody. It's like every travel agency, every airline, every hotel should send out a rider. If you're looking to book, a ticket to Hawaii, or you're looking to book a hotel room in the state of Hawaii, send out a rider like, this is what you should expect when you come here. everybody is wearing masks. You will be asked to wear a mask in public spaces, like, you know, and give people a warning. So just so they understand what it means to, like, kind of, you know, we want everyone to come enjoy their vacation, but, you know, when we're in tight spaces and when we're going out together, it's like, you know, we just have to do our part. And so I think, you know, obviously blanket messaging from the state would be helpful for our businesses, and just getting, you know, so our guests know what to expect, you know. We haven't had too many on Oahu. I know we haven't had too many off-island guests at Koko Head. It's been mostly local traffic. Here in Maui, I've seen a couple of just inter-island guests lately as we just reopened the hotel. They're sneaking in on Maui, you know, the visitors. So we're not sure where everybody is and what, you know, what's going on with the quarantine here. But I know that we're a hotel as well. So we have measures in place to make sure that if we're receiving guests from mainland, that they would have to remain under quarantine. So until the governor says otherwise.
What would you say to those out there that may be hesitant about coming into a restaurant? You know, that there are some people out there who are just saying, look at these numbers, especially after last weekend. Like, I just, it's not safe for me. I mean, how do you communicate that sort of message that you folks are open for business while being safe to those who may be hesitant to come out?
Well, you know, I mean, I think sort of the mystery is understanding where the cases, why there was a drop in cases and why there's a sudden spike in cases, you know. So I think that's it, is saying, like, okay, we haven't had any, you know, Kauai is a prime example of, like, they didn't have any new cases for a month, and then suddenly it was a spike in cases, and that happened right after inter-island travel opened up, you know. So it's sort of saying, like, what is the cause of these things? Why are the you know, why are these cases spiking, and where is it coming from? But as far as going out, you know, when you go out and you're out in an open area, you know, and lots of fresh air, you're at the beach, yeah, you don't have to wear a mask. I think when you go into a restaurant, it's a much smaller space. So if people get a little bit, you know, they get a little bit creeped out, it's like, but it's kind of like going to the grocery store, same thing. I mean, you know, everybody, all I can say is that restaurants go above and beyond in terms of health and sanitation to begin with. We have to, because we're a restaurant, we serve food. And so now that we have these COVID guidelines in place, restaurants are being even more stringent on sanitation guidelines, because our businesses depend on it. Our livelihoods depend on it at this point. I think customer peace of mind depends on it. So it's really important to us that our guests feel safe, and we have sanitizers set up all over different corners of our restaurant for them to use. We're, you know, again, all of my front of the house is they're wearing masks, they're wearing gloves, they're constantly sanitizing all the surfaces, they're cleaning the bathroom every half hour. So there are, you know, we're doing the best we can to prevent an outbreak. We have temperature, we're taking temperatures at the door as well. I went out to eat the other night at Sale Pepe, and I had a lovely meal. They took my temperature at the door. You know, everybody was in masks. Everybody was asked to wear their masks until they were, you know, at their table. If I got up to go to the bathroom, I put my mask on. So it's just kind of everybody getting used to this new reality. And I think, you know, restaurants are fairly safe. Would I go to a crowded bar with a bunch of people not wearing masks? Absolutely not. Like, you know, so I think it's really about common sense, going to someplace that, you know, look and see, are the staff wearing masks? Do they have sanitation guidelines put in place? Are they taking the necessary steps and precautions? And you have to be your own best judge of that. I know most businesses in Hawaii are doing their best to, you know, keep up with the guidelines. It's like the plexiglass industry here in Hawaii has just got to be booming right now. So, yeah, so everyone's trying to get the barriers and the plexiglass up and the PPE. And so my overall message is, please don't be afraid of Hawaii restaurants. You know, even if you don't want to go out and dine out right now, please continue to support restaurants. They need your money. They need your dollars to survive. Because if you think about it, you know, if you think about all your bars, all your favorite restaurants, even 20 or 30% of them going away, which is going to be a reality at this point, what a shame that is. You know, that's just, and it's so fast. That's how, you know, restaurants operate on such razor thin margins to begin with. And you see the sort of collapse of the food chain, where now there's food going to waste out in the fields, so it affects everything from farms to dairy to meat and protein and fishing. And I mean, it affects the whole industry. The supply chain is just, and trying to get things up and running is equally difficult. Like, I have a restaurant now. I'm seeing very little customers. I can't order a case of lettuce. I have to go out and shop out at Costco and pay retail prices, So those are other things. It's like most of my delivery guys here, my vendors here, they're only delivering Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some of them are only doing will call at a store on Wednesdays. So it's trying to figure out how to get reopened is not only expensive, but it's also challenging to navigate those things too, and figuring out how to ramp up business, because we're starting from zero. And just, it's like I would, if COVID wasn't here, I would have hoped that I would be jamming right now and I would be really busy but yeah, that's just not the reality. So we take it one day at a time.
Vicky says landlords should offer percentage rent during the pandemic to business in place. Win-win for everyone. Are you hearing about some of those negotiations actually happening? I know that not every landlord can do that.
No, I mean, I know we're not trying to negotiate with our landlords. So.
And so, yeah, you did say 20 to 30%. Is that where the estimate is in terms of closures? Is that what
I think I'll be honest. I think the closures are closer to 70 or 80%. If this continues on, if we get another wave, if we get, if we don't have measures in place to prevent the spread of COVID, especially when we open up the islands for domestic travel again, you're looking at a lot of businesses being closed for good. And that is just this very, very scary reality.
80%.
You didn't hear that number from me. I got that number from somebody else, but I won't say names.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's devastating. That is.
I mean, but even if you're saying 20%, 30%, that is still devastating. I mean, I can't, again, it's just, the reality is like everybody is trying to pay the rent. Landlords also have to pay the rent, pay their property taxes. I know there are some landlords who've been really great with their tenants, but everybody's different. Whether I'm not sure what's going on with corporations like Howard Hughes, or there are big landlords and little landlords. So everybody's kind of in a different situation. And I know the one thing that we're trying to figure out is where does the relief come? The relief is sort of like what happens to those businesses who couldn't get a PPE loan, or still in line for a PPE loan, or not eligible for a loan. What happens? People are having to reinvent themselves, trying to figure out how can I pay my rent? How can I pay the rent for my house? How can I keep a roof over my head? And that's a really, really scary thing. I mean, I think about all the the kitchen workers, hotel workers. I mean, making anywhere from $12 to $20 an hour. It's like those people are worrying, how do I pay my rent? I told my guys, I was like, listen, you guys are getting that extra stimulus check. Don't spend it. Put it away, because you're going to need it at some point, because we just don't know what's going to happen in the next few months. We're hoping that business comes back. I know here in Lahaina, some of the major players like Lahaina Grill is not going to reopen until October. The ferry is not going to start running. The boats aren't going to start doing boat tours again until at least August. So there's just, everyone's staying closed here in Lahaina until it's kind of like a wait and see game. It's really kind of frightening. But I have hope. We just had a really good Father's Day here at Pioneer Inn. So, hopefully, people will start to feel more comfortable coming out of their house. We've been seeing people from Hana, seeing people from Lanai who are like, I haven't left Hana in 3 months. So it's really nice to see some of the community get out and enjoy Lahaina before it kind of fills back up with tourists again. We want everybody to come back. We just want it to be safe.
Definitely. Well, Chef Lee Anne Wong, we thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your insights. I think it's often, we all are being impacted in different ways, and it's great to hear the perspective of somebody who's living through it from your perspective. And we thank you for your time and joining us this morning.
Thank you. Save Hawaii restaurants. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, that number is really sobering. We've heard that 20 to 30% kicked around. And of course, she's absolutely right. Losing 20 to 30% of our Hawaii restaurants would be devastating. These are, for the most part, small businesses with just, family owned in a lot of cases, not necessarily big corporations. And it's really, that would be really tough on its face. But to hear 70 to 80% as a possibility if things don't progress, that's pretty scary, Ryan.
Yeah, and it's also, interesting when you hear her talk about just the things that they have to go through on a daily basis, right? She spoke about trying to figure out the whole PPP loan program and how does she support her employees while also allowing them the opportunity to collect unemployment, while also trying to readjust her restaurant to a takeout and trying to figure out where ingredients come from and then manage. I mean, there's just so many components when you think about it, that these small business owners are having to take on not only the daily responsibilities of operations, but all of these other added things that get added to the plate. There's a lot of time and work that's being put in. And again, it's not only the restaurant industry, there's so many like it that continue to have to find ways to just survive. And so really, it's great to hear, I think, that perspective of somebody who's living through it and the challenges that they're having to face.
Yeah, and it is another reminder that these issues are so real and that when we can, if you have dollars to spend, that we spend it on places like Koko Head Cafe, like, your favorite eatery that have local ties and that are supporting local people, because we really need to make sure we target our money to keep the places that we want so that they're not in that 20 to 30, potentially 80% that could face closure.
That's right. And so we thank her and again, try to get out there and support our local restaurants. Earlier we were talking a little bit before we spoke to Chef Wong about the legislature, which again, will be reopening, getting back into session in just a little early on, sometime this week, I should say. And they're really going to be trying to hammer out some of the details of how they are going to manage the deficit that is expected. How do they help facilitate some of this money that they propose to be put in the rainy day fund, and where the money goes out to? There's been proposals of possibly providing residents with an added stimulus check, weekly payments, if you will. And so they're sort of going to have to navigate through all of those proposals and different ideas. Again, they sort of said that they were going to take these 3 weeks that they've sort of been on this recess to get back into the community, to find out what the needs are. And we'll hear more about what plans that the legislature has moving forward in this pandemic.
Right. The legislature, those lawmakers took that CARES Act money and they put it in the rainy day fund, taking power away from Governor David Ige in terms of being able to spend it on his own. So now they hold the purse strings. So what happens to all that money? There are timelines that the federal government has imposed in terms of spending it. Also some restrictions as to where it should go. But you hear someone like Chef Lee Anne Wong saying, hey, the restaurants need a bailout. And there are so many sectors of our community that say, we need money as well. Everybody clamoring for those finances, and they have deadlines to spend it. So we're really looking forward on Thursday to talking to Senate President Ron Kochi. He's going to be joining us to tell us about some of the plans that the lawmakers have in place. And I know you all want to know where that money is going. Those are your tax dollars at work. So we are going to be asking him about that. Tomorrow, we have Dr. Angela Pratt joining us from Kapiolani Medical Center. She is the head of obstetrics and gynecology there. She'll be talking to us about some of the challenges that the hospital has faced when it comes to delivering babies and also giving maternal care during this time of COVID, both prenatal and postpartum. Of course, we know that women who have had babies and families who have new kids in their family need a lot of care. So what is it like to deliver in the time of COVID? We'll be talking to her. Really excited to talk to her. She is an expert in women's health, and we are so happy to have her. And then Friday, Ryan, we have a guest who is always popular.
That's right. Lieutenant Governor Josh Green will be on the program. A lot of talk right now about what sort of the plans are for the reopening. Again, we're expected to hear from the governor sometime this week. He said yesterday in the next few days about sort of the reopening of Hawaii. We know that the lieutenant governor has been very active and vocal about his ideas for reopening the state. So hopefully we get some of those proposals and we can ask the lieutenant governor for more details on how exactly all of this is implemented once we hear that official announcement from the state, which again is expected sometime soon. So looking forward to the rest of the week coming up with a number of guests that I think are going to be really great to hear from and provide more insights into this conversation that we have. Of course, we like to always end our show by highlighting some of the good things that are happening here in our community.
That's right. And today, staying on the theme of food, we are highlighting the Chef Hui, the Give and Go program that they have. Through a mix of private funders and partners, the program offers a meal stipend for each additional set of meals. We'll slip to the side there. So basically, you buy a meal and the restaurant gives a meal. It's if you purchase from a participating restaurant, customers can amplify their purchase by helping the community one meal at a time. The Chef Hui has been doing a number of things. They've also been involved in food distributions, cooking meals for kupuna, making sure that our families are fed here in Hawaii. They do amazing things. And you have to also remember that a lot of the people who are doing this work are people like Lee Anne Wong, who are facing their own challenges as business owners, and yet they themselves are continuing to give back. So we really mahalo Chef Hui for all that they do. You can check out their website there to get the list of restaurants where you can amplify your purchasing power by feeding those in your community and also helping out our local businesses.
Yeah, so great to hear of how they are able to support the community while they are also suffering themselves. And I think it just speaks to just their generosity and their aloha and their care for this community. So we say thank you to them for all that they continue to do in helping to keep Hawaii moving forward during this time and supporting those in our community. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, as well as Hawaii Pacific Health, for allowing us this conversation. We're sort of wrapping things up with the COVID-19 care conversation. Next week will be our last week. We are going to run through the end of this month. And then after that, things will look a little bit differently. We'll be doing some other things, and you'll still see us once in a while here, just not every day.
Yeah, not every day. We're switching to probably twice a week schedule. So don't worry. I see Ingrid and Dave, Jimmy also pushing for our sponsors. Hey, we got to tell you, our sponsors have been incredible in helping us continue this program. You have to remember, we started back on March 25th.
Yes.
So we have been here with you every day for quite a long time, but we love this relationship. We love the back and forth. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words. We really appreciated this conversation, and it's not over. We still got another week to go. But starting the first week of July, that's on the 6th, we'll be launching a new program just twice a week, and we're going to tell you more about it. But that's just the tease. But it's going to be good, and it'll be Ryan and I here joining you at least twice a week.
That's right. And it's going to be a pivot away from not everything will be COVID related. There's also some other conversations and important things that are happening in our community that we want to definitely engage all of you in and sort of bring you information and updates about those topics as well. So we'll have more information in the next few days. But thank you all for tuning in. And again, for your kind words. We look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow at 10:30 here on the platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. And until then, we will bid you a fond aloha and a hui hou.
See you tomorrow.